Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a Priory 12 that I pugged. Um, this was the last key that I needed to unlock Resilient 12 keys, which doesn't really matter for me because I'm not a huge key pusher or anything like that. I think it is fun. I wanted to zoom in. This is around Halloween, so I've got a pumpkin head. I think it is fun to do keys, and I really like pushing. But I have a hard time finding a solid push group, so it's not a huge deal. And also, I'm a lot more into raiding than I am doing Mythic Plus. It's a lot funner for me, so it's nice to have the resilient 12 keys, so that worst case scenario, you can run them 100 times or whatever, and finally do them. I don't think I'll ever be in the situation where we can't do a 12 uh, with the people that I play with. So I'm not super worried about it, but it is nice to have that unlocked. Something I'll mention here, um, this pull, I don't usually see this pull happen on the stairs. Usually I've seen people take it next to the stairs. But I do see this pull pretty much every time I do this key. You'll pull all of those first packs onto this first mini boss and then stack them and send Lust and all of your CDs and blast everything. There are a couple things to be aware of. First, there's some caltrops that happen. You can see right there. They're those little like bear trap looking things. That those happen when the guy jumps to you and then sends out the four caltrops. If you're stacked on top of everybody else, then those caltrops will always be baited in a position that you don't have to move to dodge them. And that I'll say that with an asterisk. I have seen times where you're in this corner, and because the caltrop can't actually go to where it wants to go, it gets pushed on top of people, and people end up taking damage from it. And that's pretty problematic. But for the most part, you just stack up, and then you don't have to dodge anything, and everything is fine. There's a caltrop right behind me. I don't think I notice it right now. Yep, and I walk right into it. It does a decent amount of damage, but I just disperse, and it gets rid of it, and then I can go back into doing my rotation. I should have had my eyes out for those caltrops more, but also it wasn't such a huge deal that I'm not too worried about it. That's just kind of a general skill that you need to develop when you're DPS, but really when you're playing World of Warcraft at all, is to be watching your feet, because there are very many abilities in this game that are highlighted on the ground for you to be able to dodge, and it's damage that you don't have to take as long as you dodge it. And so it's worth keeping your eyes on. I don't think I even noticed going into this poll, or from that last poll, that that attendant guy, that the mini boss was with us. This was a huge mistake by me. This lunging strike person who's coming in right now, they've been down at the bottom of the stairs there for a minute, and I didn't. They still don't have any dots on them. I haven't had any dots on this chainmail mini boss for its entire life. I just barely got dots on it. So that is a huge mistake by me. Even though my DPS is looking okay, 10 million or whatever, I'm second on the meters. That was a huge mistake by me, because that mini boss is really the bottleneck to moving on through the dungeon. That's the boss. That mini boss is like your main priority that needs to die. So really, what I should be doing here is I should be solo or single targeting this mini boss and dotting everything else and doing cleave damage to everything else. Because now you can see I didn't have damage on this boss at all for like 40% of its life, something like that, and now it's the last thing alive for another 70 million HP. We could have been on the next polls by now, and this is 100% my fault that this took so long to die. You can't tell in the DPS meters that I did something very bad there, but I did. So I'm taking accountability for that, and that's something I'll keep in mind for future polls, for future keys. I sent my Halo there hoping that we would be going into the next packs pretty quickly, and to try to keep it synced up with my other CDs. And I did manage to keep it synced up pretty well. It's hard to see under here, but it's got 30 seconds and this has 25. I send a Mass Dispel on this first one every time. Um, and I sent the Halo there, and I lost a decent amount of value from it by not being in combat with anything. Your Halo, it gives you some charges of Mind Flay and Sanity, which is very important, and it also gives you some debuffs on the enemies that increase the damage you do to them. So it's important that you hit things with your Halo. You don't want to just send your Halo for the fun of it, just to generate Mind Flay and Sanity procs. I mean, those Mind Flay and Sanity procs are a huge deal, and you do want to generate those. They're very important. But um, if you're not hitting anything with your Halo, you're losing one of the two things that your Halo does for you. And really, there are other things that your Halo does, like it heals other people and it extends your Void form when it bounces, things like that. Um, but it is worth trying to get as much as you can out of it. Elena Emberlands is the next mini boss that we're going to be fighting. So I should be focusing Elena, and I should be dotting everything else, and then just doing my single target rotation on Elena, which I am at this current moment. So good job, me. I'm going to send a Vampiric Embrace right here because it's off cooldown, and I'm in Void form, so I'm getting decent amount of damage or healing out of it because of my damage. This Disrupting Shout, those will go off every so often. I don't know exactly which mob is doing those, but in that first pull and in this pull, those Disrupting Shouts will go off, and you need to make sure you're not casting anything when that happens. If you're casting like a Mind Flay Insanity or a Void Torrent, those are the main things that are going to get you, or maybe even a Void Eruption as you're trying to get into your Void form. If you're casting any of that stuff, when that cast finishes from the mob, then it's going to lock you out of shadow spells. And as a shadow priest, you have no abilities that aren't shadow spells aside from your regular priest spells like Flash Heal and Body and Soul or Power Word Shield and Angelic Feather, those things. So if you get locked out of your shadow school of casting, I made a big mistake here as well. If you get locked out of that, you're going to do 0 damage. So it's very, very important that you're keeping an eye on those Disrupting Shouts. I'm actually planning on making a weak aura, because after doing this key, I realized that I need one. Right here, I fade because it reduces your detection range. So I cast Mind Soothe on those guys and I faded to get by them instead of having to wait for the patrol. I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but it did, so that's sweet. Um, I'm going to make a weak aura, I believe, that keeps track. Whenever that Disrupting Shout starts happening, I want to have like a timer on my screen that says stop casting so that I know this Disrupting Shout right now. I don't know when it goes off. I take a chunk of damage, so I assume that it's it, but I don't actually know when it's going to go off. It'd be much easier for me if I just had a timer that's counting down and it says 0. I know I need to not be casting at 0, so I stop and then I can go back into casting. So I am probably going to make a weak aura like that, if that's something you'd be interested in, or if you have any other ideas for weak auras that would be helpful. I know that there are like uh, dungeon weak aura groups that people have made, and I would suggest getting one of those because they're pretty helpful for sure. But I like to minimize the amount of stuff that I have on my UI and the amount of stuff that I get from other people, and really just in general, so that I can see what's important to see, and I try to build up from there. So like that Disrupting Shout, if I had just gotten one of those Mythic Plus dungeon weak aura groups, the Disrupting Shout would almost certainly be included in that, and I'd have a way to track it. But there would also be a lot of other things included in that that I may or may not want to see, or may or may not care about. And so I prefer to go as bare bones as possible, and then as I do content, decide what kinds of things I need to start paying attention to, and then react appropriately. So, like, I've noticed that that Disrupting Shout is important for me to be able to track, so now I'm going to make a weak aura myself for it. Um, and that's just the way I like to approach things. I like to do a similar thing in Raid, and I picked it up from Jeeth from Echo, the Holy Paladin at the time. Jeeth was the one who I watched a video of his where he talked about how when you're going into a raid encounter, a lot of the times if you get those, like I'm saying, if you get those big weak aura packs, they'll often have a lot of things on them that you don't need or you don't care about, and it can be helpful to like go into your bigwigs or your DBM and turn everything off, and then as stuff starts happening and you start to realize what you want to pay more attention to, you can start turning those things on and customizing your UI to best serve you. Um, I will say that that takes more effort and that takes more capability. You have to be able to like uh, make things that can keep track of things for you, and you have to be able to like design, uh, how you want to be notified of things and stuff like that. So it is more effort and it does take more ability than just downloading a weak aura pack, for example. Um, so if you're not confident in making a weak aura, or if you're not sure exactly how it's going to be helpful, or how you can be most efficient with it, then I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't download weak aura packs. I totally am a huge fan of the weak auras community, and the work that people do I think is super super helpful, and definitely worth getting if it's going to make a difference for you. But if you are confident in making stuff like that, that's maybe a mindset that you could try to adopt, of go as bare bones as possible and then build your way up from there. Okay, so we just killed this first boss. That first boss is a two target cleave scenario the entire time, which is really nice because Shadow Priests do pretty well with that. Just in the sense that we can hit both pretty much all the time. We don't hit both in the same way that a lot of other classes do, which feels pretty bad. Um, but we are able to do damage, and decent damage, to both through the whole fight. We're not like a melee class that has to have them stacked to do damage to them. We could do damage to them as long as they're within 40 yards of each other. It doesn't matter if they're jumping around or whatever. So that's nice. But we don't do 100% damage to both because of Psychic Link. So we're only doing 40% damage to one and 100% damage to the other. And there are ways that you can adjust that. Like, for example, if you're in Lust and your cooldowns, then you can maintain a Devouring Plague on both targets pretty consistently. It's going to take more effort because you're going to have to swap between the two targets back and forth, and it's going to make it so that you're more prone to sending like Mind Flay Insanities into a target that doesn't have a Devouring Plague on it, or things like that. But you are able to keep two on two targets pretty consistently, and in that scenario, you're going to be doing even more damage than just your Psychic Link damage, um, because you get the extra mastery bonus from having your Devouring Plague on the second target, and you're getting your Devouring Plague damage on the target, right? So you're doing a little bit more than just 40% damage of your single target on the one that you're focusing to the other guy, and it is worth doing. So there are ways to do things like that, or maybe you're saving your Void Volley for when they are stacked, or things like that. There are ways to bump up your damage a little bit instead of just having your dots on your Vampiric Touch and your Shadow Word Pain on one of them, and then single targeting the other and only doing 40% of your damage to the second guy. Um, so that's something to keep in mind as well. It would be way nice, and obviously it'd be super broken because this isn't how it works for a bunch of other classes. But it would be way nice if they ramped up that number on Psychic Link a little bit. I like 40%, but a much nicer number would be 50%, and a much nicer number would be 60%. You know what I'm saying? So that would be sweet. It would bump our damage up significantly. But like I said before, it'd be super broken. We're designed around only being able to do 40% of our damage to Psychic Link targets, at least right now. And it's a really easy way for Blizzard to tune Shadow Priests. They can, in the past, it was very difficult to tune Shadow Priests. We had a lot of issues in the past where um, Shadow Priests would just randomly be doing a crap ton of damage, and Blizzard would be kind of at a loss for how to address it. And so we'd get like a nerf that comes out because they have to nerf us because we're doing like 30% more damage than any other class. So a nerf would come out, but then the nerf would either be way too effective because it affects things that they because our damage isn't so, or it used to be not so straightforward that they could just say they could just turn a dial and say, well, instead of doing 40%, it's going to do 30%. It used to be a lot more complicated. Psychic Link has really fixed that for Blizzard. So now, if a Shadow Priest is doing too much damage, it's super easy for Blizzard to just say, okay, instead of Psychic Link doing 40% damage, we're gonna have it do 30%. Or instead of Psychic Link doing 40% damage, we're gonna have it do 35% or whatever it is, right? It makes it way easier for them to tune us. Because the opposite is also true. If Shadow Priests aren't doing enough damage, then it's really easy for them to say, okay, let's bump that psychic link number up to 50% or 60% or whatever it is. Obviously, that's only going to affect scenarios where you have multiple targets. So, tuning a Shadow Priest in strictly single target is still a little more complicated than it is in AoE or multi target situations. But it's super nice that they can now tune us more easily because I think it's better for the Shadow Priest players as well because it means that instead of being worried that oh crap they're gonna tune Shadow Priest, I don't know if this nerf is gonna be 5% or 85%, and instead of being in that situation where you're not sure what's gonna happen and sometimes you get super boned and sometimes it's no big deal. Instead, you're in a situation where they say, "Oh, we need a nerf Shadow Priest in AOE situations," and you can be pretty confident that the nerf is going to be approximately what they were aiming for, right? Because they can just say 40 to 30 or whatever it is. They've got one dial to turn instead of like 6 or 7 dials to turn like they used to. Okay, so this boss does a couple of big mechanics that you need to be aware of. That Hammer of Purity will come out in 6 seconds. It puts dots or circles on the ground around every party member. That's why I'm in melee right now, is because we want to stack these hammers of purity as much as we can. So there you get 3 of them. These spin out, and if you stack them all and then run the boss really far away, you can pretty much ignore those. And then he also has this Castigator's Shield, which does these big circles that you got to get out of. Sometimes a slow will line up with those. I like to save my Goblin Jump for those scenarios because just running out with the slow, you have enough time to do it, but it is a lot scarier. And then also he'll do that Sacrificial Pyre. That's a healer mechanic. I don't know exactly how it works, other than when the healer walks into it, it loses one of its orbs. I think it usually has 5. So the healer needs to step into it 5 different times. This one only had 3, at 3 charges. But when the healer does step into it, it's gonna chunk the raid. And so if you're watching your healer, that's why it's typically managed by the healers, is because it's gonna chunk the raid so they can step in, heal people up, step in, heal people up, step in, heal people up, and it's more consistent for them than if they let somebody else do it. But I've never seen that mechanic cause any sorts of problems for a key that I've been in. So I don't think it's something that you need to be too worried about. It is something though that as the DPS you need to have eyes on it so that you don't accidentally step into it and ruin the cadence that your healer is going for, because then you could cause all sorts of issues. If you accidentally have 2 stacks from it instead of 1, or your healer doesn't have CDs where they need them, then you're gonna cause a lot of problems. Okay, so we're getting pretty close to the end of this dungeon. There's going to be this one big chapel area that we have to do, and then we're going to go up to the boss. There's a lot of stuff that happens in this chapel. And actually, this first pull I think goes pretty well. Usually people will pull it out and around this corner, and then you need to make sure you're not in melee because these consecrations will go off. You can go into melee briefly to send a psychic scream and then run out, but those sacred tolls, the consecrations, all of that stuff is like trying to get you to stay out of melee. And as a Shadow Priest, we are more than happy to do that, to stay out of melee. But then you run into a little bit of an awkward scenario with these stairs. There's enough room at this landing at the top of the stairs that you can just play the packs here. But sometimes you'll be in a scenario where you run down the stairs a little bit to try and get out of something, and now you're out of line of sight of your healer, and then a sacred toll goes off and you die because the sacred toll hits everybody and your healer can't heal you because you're so far away, because you're out of line of sight of them, I mean. This burst of light, the light spawn, you don't have to kill it all the way. It'll kill itself after a certain amount of time. So those, you don't want to be focusing the light spawns. You can just let them get cleaved down. This Blessing of Sacred Flame, I'm not sure exactly what it does, but it's a 30-minute buff, so make sure that you guys are grabbing these as you're running through. And then here we accidentally pull a lot more than we are expecting, so I'll just let you guys watch how this ends up going, and I'll try to point out a couple of things that make it better. So we first get a couple of kicks. So we have that capacitor totem, I think it's called, that happens right there. Um, so it synchronizes all of the casts at the same time, these fireball volleys, which is a little dangerous because it means that if two are happening at the same time and they both go off, we're just screwed. But we end up sending all of our kicks. We got a lot of good stops going on here. I sent Psychic Scream already. I'll send it again if it comes up. Our Protection Paladin is kicking like crazy as well. And then, yeah, we're going to be able to pull this off. You just need to make sure when this purification goes on you, you need to have, it chunks you like crazy, so you need to, send Fade or send a Flash Heal or both, or send your Desperate Prayer. And then, yeah, you're going to want to make sure I send my Psychic Scream again. It's very important. I'm going to disperse here because otherwise I'll die. I get pretty low. Yeah, I disperse. It's very important that you have dots on everything in every pack that you're ever pulling, because things will only take damage from you if they have your dots on them, and if you want to kill the whole pack, it's important you have dots on everything. We get really close to dying there, but we did manage to pull it off. Our healer is starting to run pretty low on mana, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it's on this pull or the next pull, but at some point our healer is going to ask. Our healer's going to type mana to be like, hey bro, we need to slow down for a second. I can't heal you guys. Um, but yeah, we managed to pull that off pretty decently. This Brawn Pike guy has this aura that is a permanent thing. If you're standing near him, and I think it might, I don't know what the range is. I imagine it's like 100 yards or something. But this aura is doing 300,000 damage to us every single second. And so it's very, very important when you're fighting this Sir Brawn Pike guy. I mean, this is true about all of the mini-bosses that we've fought so far. But when you're fighting Sir Brawn Pike especially, it's very important that you focus him down. That's why our healer is going to run out of mana here, is because this dot is just ticking on everybody the entire time. They're doing 4 million HPS, so I'm doing 1 million. Our Paladin is doing 2 million, our Protection Paladin. This is 7 million HPS happening on this pull, because and we're still dying, right? That's how much healing has to happen to keep the group alive during that, right? So that's why it's so important to focus Brawn Pike, is because he contributes a lot of that damage that needs to be healed for. That dot, especially the higher key that you do, that dot is going to hit harder and harder and harder, and it's going to be more important to focus him down. Okay, so I believe that this is the last pull that we need before we go into the boss. Oh, actually, I'm pretty sure that on this dungeon we almost two-chested, but our percentage was off. Because, yeah, I'm actually pretty sure that this last pull is not going to be enough to put us at 100%. It's not. We're at 99.27. Nobody notices. Or if somebody did notice, I imagine the tank probably noticed. We didn't decide to do anything about it. We sit here for a second to let the healer get mana, and then we go straight into this next boss. I sent a Halo there, which I had to send, I think, but is a little bit off sync from my other abilities. The boss will do that central like consecration type thing that a bunch of the mobs have been doing. So you need to make sure that you're standing at melee. The boss will cast this purification beam that targets somebody, and they just need to run away from it, and it'll leave crap in its wake. And then the boss will also cast these holy smites that need to be interrupted, and they will also cast. That's the holy flame. That's the consecration thing I was talking about. They will also cast this blinding light. This blinding light, you just need to make sure that your character isn't facing the boss when it goes off. I imagine that most people know about that already, but something that you can do is you can start channeling a Mind Flay and then turn around, and your Mind Flay will keep doing damage while you're not facing the boss. That can be a really nice thing to do. You also don't have to be facing the boss to use um, either Shadow Word Pain or Devouring Plague. Devouring Plague can be cast without having line of sight. Well, okay, so let me clarify. I think you do need to have line of sight, but I don't think you need to be facing the boss to do it. And I'm confident that you don't have to be facing the boss to do it. So you can turn around and still be sending devouring plagues into the target. You also, if you have a mind flay insanity, it's fine to send that, turn around, turn back, because it will still channel while you're not facing the boss. Um, and I think Shadow Word Death as well. I think you can send Shadow Word Deaths without being able to see the boss. But anything that you have to like sit there and cast, like a Void Torrent, the start of your Mind Flay, your Vampiric Touch, any of those things, those abilities all have to be all of those you have to be facing the boss for. But once you've started casting, it's a little complicated. If you start casting a Vampiric Touch while you're looking at the boss, and then you turn around, and then before your Vampiric Touch ends, you turn back, you will get the cast off. But if you can't start the cast and you can't finish the cast without looking at the boss. So you need to make sure that the start of the cast and the very end of the cast are both looking at the boss. If you're doing something like Vampiric Touch, where um, the the end of the cast is going to put some dots on it, or something like that. Um, so that is an option. Like right here, I can't cast Mind Blast. Mind Blast does need to be looking at the boss. I'm not positive about the instant cast Mind Blast, but I think that one also you need to be looking at the boss, because Mind Blast without the instant cast is a channeled ability, a casted ability, right? It takes 1.2 seconds or whatever to cast it, and that means that in order to start casting it, you have to be facing the boss, and I think that affects the uh, the instant cast Mind Blast as well. Okay, so we just finished the last boss. We're 0.73% short, so we're just gonna go in here and put a skull on a mob. It happens to not be the mob that I'm focusing. We ended up needing to kill 2 of these anyway, so it wasn't the worst thing for me to do this, but you're going to put a skull on a mob typically is what people will do and say, hey, make sure we kill this thing first. We don't need to kill this whole pack. We just need to kill 2 things. So you'll put a skull on it to say, kill this thing, and then there we go. I end up getting the Resilient Keystone 12 achievement. I'm at 3078. Feels pretty good. We'll see how high I get by the end of this season. And yeah, that's going to be it for me. So if you watched this video, if you liked it, leave a like. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Maybe share it with your friends or whatever. I appreciate anybody who stuck around this long. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.